You pull open the freezer door. Cold air spills over your hand. You dig a spoon into a carton of vanilla ice cream, and in less than 30 seconds, you're eating something frozen, sweet, and impossibly smooth. It feels ordinary. It is not. That scoop is a fossil of 3,000 years of human stubbornness, once rarer than silk, more fleeting than perfume, and reserved almost entirely for emperors. Today, the average American eats around 20 pounds of ice cream every year. That is roughly the weight of a car tire. But 2,000 years ago, a single bowl of anything similar could cost a small fortune and demand the round-the-clock labor of entire teams of workers. So how did ancient people, with no freezers, no electricity, no refrigeration of any kind, manage to create frozen desserts at all? The answer begins with a resource you never think about: cold. Your world is full of it on demand. Their world was not. In the ancient Mediterranean, in Persia, in China, summer heat could climb past 40 degrees Celsius, over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Ice existed in only two places: high on mountains, or locked inside winter. If you wanted cold in July, you had to steal it from January. And that is exactly what they did. Let's travel back 3,000 years to China. The Shijing, or Book of Songs, is a collection of poems compiled around 1,000 years before Christ. One of those poems describes workers cutting blocks of ice from frozen rivers in the second month of winter and hauling them into underground storage cellars. The Zhou dynasty court even employed a dedicated staff of ice men whose entire job was harvesting, storing, and rationing frozen water for the royal household. Imagine, ice was so precious it had its own government department. Would you have guessed that the first cold chain logistics system in history was built for a king's summer drinks? Now, what if you lived where rivers never freeze? In the deserts of ancient Persia, engineers pulled off something even stranger. They didn't just store ice, they made it. Around 2,400 years ago, Persians began building structures called yakhchals. The word literally means ice pit. From the outside, a yakhchal looks like a giant clay beehive, a dome of mud brick rising up to 18 meters above the sand. Inside, a deep shaded pit held ice straight through the blazing summer. The walls were built 2 meters thick from a special mortar: sand, clay, egg whites, lime, goat hair, and ash, a mixture so cleverly insulating that some of these domes still stand in Iran today. But here's the ingenious part. On cold desert nights, workers channeled water into shallow pools beside the dome. Under clear, dry skies, the water radiated its heat straight into space and froze, even when the air itself hovered just above freezing. By morning, there was ice. By noon, it was stacked underground. With that ice, Persian cooks chilled a dessert of rose water, saffron, fruit syrup, and fine frozen noodles, an ancestor of the faloudes still sold in Iranian cities right now. Frozen dessert, made in a desert 24 centuries ago. What's your freezer's excuse? So far, all these frozen treats were essentially flavored ice or syrup. The leap toward real dairy ice cream began with an empire famous for its appetites: Rome. Wealthy Romans craved cold so badly that they paid teams of runners and mule drivers to haul snow down from the mountains, packed in straw to slow the melting. The writer Pliny the Elder described how the Emperor Nero enjoyed water that had been boiled and then chilled in snow, a drink called decoction. Boiling first was an early form of purification, and chilling it in snow made it the ancient equivalent of designer bottled water. The philosopher Seneca grumbled that snow shops in Rome sold frozen slush at scandalous prices, and that nobody was content to drink anything at its natural temperature anymore. Sound familiar? Romans mixed their mountain snow with honey, wine, and fruit pulp, creating something between a slushie and a sorbet. It was dessert as status symbol. If snow appeared on your table in August, everyone in the room knew exactly how rich you were. Half a world away, a different court was experimenting with milk. Picture a summer evening in Tang Dynasty China, around 1,200 years ago. You are standing in a palace courtyard in Chang'an, one of the largest cities on the planet. Lanterns glow, musicians play, servants emerge carrying shallow bowls packed with shaved ice, and on top sits something new: a chilled mixture of fermented water buffalo milk, flour, and camphor, a fragrant crystal that gave the dish a cooling, almost minty aroma. Court records suggest the emperor's kitchens kept dozens of icemen on staff to freeze and serve it. This dish is one of the earliest dairy-based frozen desserts in the historical record. It was not quite ice cream, but it was close enough that your taste buds would recognize the idea instantly. At this point, a famous legend probably just popped into your head. Marco Polo went to China, tasted ice cream, and carried the recipe back to Italy. It is a wonderful story. It is also almost certainly false. Food historians have searched Marco Polo's actual writings and found no mention of ice cream, frozen milk, or anything like it. The tale was invented centuries later, likely as marketing. The great food historian Elizabeth David called it pure myth, And Alan Davidson, the scholar behind the Oxford Companion to Food, agreed. Ice cream did not arrive in Europe in one traveler's luggage. It was built slowly by a discovery that sounds like it should not work at all. Here is the twist. Everything you have heard so far, the ice cellars, the yakhchals, the snow runners, could only chill food. None of it could freeze cream. Ice on its own sits at 0 degrees Celsius, 32 Fahrenheit, but a bowl of sweetened cream freezes well below that. Press a container of custard into plain ice, and you get cold soup, not ice cream. The breakthrough, when it finally came, was salt. That exact substance you sprinkle on dinner is what made ice cream possible. When you mix salt into ice, the salt forces the ice to melt, and melting steals heat from everything around it. The slushy brine that forms can plunge to around minus 20 degrees Celsius, that's minus 4 Fahrenheit, far colder than ice alone. Scholars in the medieval Islamic world had already documented how dissolving certain salts in water could produce intense artificial cold. By the 1500s, the trick had reached Italy, where in 1550 a physician in Rome named Blas Villafranca published a method for chilling wine with saltpeter and proudly noted that everyone in the city was now cooling their drinks this way. Now apply that principle. Put a metal pot of sweetened cream inside a bucket of salted ice, stir and scrape as it freezes. The mixture grows smooth. Tiny, delicate ice crystals form. You get ice cream by 1694. In Naples, a steward named Antonio Latini published recipes for sorbetti in his cookbook Lo Scalco alla Moderna, the modern steward. Among them was a sorbet made with milk, candied citron, and sugar. Many historians point to it as the first published recipe of true ice cream in Europe. From the Italian courts, it spread to Paris cafes, to London pleasure gardens, to the American colonies. It stopped being an emperor's secret. Slowly, scoop by scoop, it became yours. And that is the part worth sitting with. Every element of the ice cream in your freezer is a fossil of this story. The freezing point trickery of salt still hides inside every old-fashioned hand-crank churn. The obsession with shaved ice lives on in every snow cone. The Persian love of rose water and frozen noodles is still served daily in Tehran. Your freezer hums quietly in the corner of your kitchen, doing in silence, for pennies, what once required mountain runners, desert engineers, royal ice departments, and 2-meter-thick walls of egg-white mortar. You own something Nero would have traded a province for? You just call it Tuesday. So tonight, when you pull open the freezer door and the cold air spills over your hand, pause for just 1 second. That little cloud of frost is 3,000 years of human stubbornness. Poets in ancient China wrote about hauling it. Engineers in Persia built domes to keep it. Emperors in Rome and Chang'an paid fortunes to taste it. And now it waits for you, behind a plastic door, next to the frozen peas. You're not just holding a spoonful of vanilla, you're holding the coldest luxury in history, finally within reach of your hand. If this story gave you a new appreciation for that humble carton, hit the like button and subscribe for more hidden histories of everyday things. And in the comments, I would love to know, what ordinary item do you suspect has an epic, forgotten backstory? Tell me below. I'll see you in the next one.